John Swinney says Labour's intensifying austerity as he prepares cuts in Scotland. I'm going to read into this more from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from The Guardian with the headline, John Swinney says Labour's intensifying austerity as he prepares cuts in Scotland. The First Minister complains of the same Tory cuts agenda in an effort to shift the blame for his own government's budget problems. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. So... Now, obviously, I'll always say when it comes to Scottish politics, guys, I always recommend checking out the YouTube channel, The Two Davies, youtube.com/The Two Davies. Check out, they do a live stream every Monday and Thursday at 4 p.m. UK time. When they talk about, they're much more insight when it comes to Scottish politics. However, every now and then, I'll sometimes talk about what's happening up in the north here. And this one here, I wanted to talk about this one because I think it's really, really important. Given the situation that the SNP are in, and it's not been very good time for them, obviously, since the drubbing at the general election. There has been a lot of reflecting, a lot of faults that they've been pondering. Scotland have definitely been thinking about, and they have, I would say, some people have lost their way. They have had been in charge for a long time. They've had control for a long time up there. And obviously, the elections in Hollywood will obviously have a significant impact in Scotland as well. But we'll have to wait. That's not for a while still. But there have definitely been questions about John Swinney, whether he was the right man. Obviously, most people's handpick will be, obviously, if it was Stephen Flynn. People would rather have Stephen Flynn as the leader rather than that. He's been a fantastic advocate speaker in Westminster. Excuse me, time and time again. The man has delivered and has always said the right things. I would say about 95% of the time he's always said the right things as well. And spoken about really speaking about the interests of the Scottish people. But this whole, some of these cuts and tough decisions that we've been hearing the Labour government have been saying. And it's very important for people to understand is that Scotland's purses, Wales's purses, Northern Ireland's purses are always held by Westminster at the end of the day. It's really important to understand that. And if they're not getting the same money that they got last month or last year or whatever that period, if they're getting less money from Westminster, it means that the SNP, it means that the governments of those administrations, whether it's Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, have to make difficult decisions. And it's not right that some of the decisions that have been made in Scotland are primarily the fault of Scotland. You can make your cases whether you want to or not. But let's be clear. I'm not going to call what Labour are doing austerity. I'm not going to go that far. Some of my Scottish friends may do so. They can call it that if they want to. I don't agree with that assessment. I don't think it's austerity that Labour are imposing. But I could be entirely wrong, and they could impose a whole raft of austerities, and in that case, I'll hold my hands up. But I do think, that they have not helped themselves. They have attacked the SNP and blamed them for some of the cuts and things that they have made up there, while also at the same time have defended the Welsh government, the Welsh Labour government, for the Welsh Labour administration, saying, that they couldn't do certain things because of the Conservatives in Westminster when they were in power. And yet here they are blaming the SNP in Scotland. So you can tell they're playing political politics here, Labour. So, but I really do hope that the SNP will, while obviously independence is always going to be in the forefront of their minds on everything, I really do hope that they will do a lot of reflecting and really try to get down to the nitty and gritty of what people really want in Scotland, and really pay attention to as much as they can to the interests of the people of Scotland, and not always get bogged down with this whole independence it is an ultimate goal that the SNP want at the end of the day, because I generally believe that I've always said that if the people of Scotland want that vote, they should be perfectly entitled to it, and it's always a case of if they want it. It should never be up to Westminster to make that decision. It should be down to the people of Scotland to make that decision, because that is a democracy. But as of right here, right now, it's definitely not something that I don't think is in the forefront of minds of a lot of Scottish people, because I think if it was, probably would not have lost so many seats to Labour. I think that's a really important point there. So let's read what this piece has had to say, you guys. So John Swinney has accused Labour of intensifying austerity as his ministers prepared to cut hundreds of millions of pounds in Scotland's public spending this week. Yeah, that's really bad if that's really bad, if that's to be the case. In an effort to deflect blame for his own government's budget challenges, the First Minister said Labour was implementing the same Tory cuts agenda after the Treasury announced plans for £22 billion in cuts last month. Swinney said the Scottish Labour leader, Annie Sarwar, told him before the election, "Read my lips, no austerity under Labour." That was the era-defining moment, Swinney has said. That's what's politics at its most senile. It's a total breach of trust with those who supported Labour, Swinney told delegates at the Scottish National Party's annual conference in Edinburgh. Labour hasn't delivered change. Labour is delivering the same damning austerity as the Tories. Swinney's attacks are designed to prepare the ground for sweeping Scottish spending cuts to be announced on Tuesday by his government, which has already been in power for 17 years. So at the time of this recording, you might have seen those cuts already, guys. Shona Robison, the Scottish Finance Secretary, is expected to reallocate approximately £1 billion in public spending, which is to include direct cuts to arts, council and transport budgets of up to £600 million. Scottish Labour said that these cuts are a direct result of the Scottish Government's failure to properly budget the above-inflation public sector pay sites and its chaotic response to economic shock. Last week, the Scottish Fiscal Commission, an official economic watchdog with a similar role to the UK's Office of Budget Responsibility, said the budgetary crisis was substantially due to Robison agreeing to unbudget pay deals. Sarwar cited repeated warnings about overspending and inadequate budgeting from the Scottish Government's own documents, as well as analysis by Audit Scotland, the official spending watchdog, and the economic think tanks of Institute for Physical Studies and the Fraser of Alliance Institute. Swinney rejects those claims as he made his first speech since replacing Hamza Yousaf as SNP leader, after Yousaf plunged his government into crisis by unilaterally ending his party's power-sharing deal with the Scottish Greens back in March. That crisis has an expensive scandal at Hollywood, and the police investigation into the SNP's finances helped fuel a dramatic collapse in support of the SNP. At the general election, the party lost 39 Westminster seats to Labour in its worst result since 2010. Yeah. It's important to add those caveats in there. All those things definitely played a massive role, without a shadow of a doubt, in the in a massive hampering, scandals and the finances. These were not very good-looking public images for the SNP. Swinney faces a significant challenge in preparing for the SNP for the 2026 Hollywood elections. Hollywood opinion polls put Labour and the SNP neck and neck, while the SNP has lost nearly half its membership since 2015, depriving the party of much-needed income. Swinney has sought to lift the party spirits by previewing plans to redouble efforts to tackle child poverty that will be set out on Wednesday in his programme for government, and urging activists to rekindle the positive move of the 2014 referendum campaign. He said more tailored support would be offered to families in poverty, and that his support would not be offset the two-child benefit cap, but was an example of the sustained smarter policy making that we are delivering in government. Borrowing from Labour's economic first rhetoric, Swinney said his ministers would also prioritise economic investment, telling delegates on Friday the SNP had to win back Scottish middle earners who deserted the party in swathes at the election. Swinney's advisers accused Sarwar of downplaying Labour's responsibility for the government's financial challenges because more cuts are on the horizon. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, expected to detail in her October budget how the UK government will cut spending to bridge the £22 billion funding gap she identified back in July. That would mean a second round of cuts in the Scottish spending later this year. In an attempt to rally activists, Swinney asked them to remember the hope, optimism and sense of possibility of 2014 when Scotland hosted the Ryanair Cup and the Commonwealth Games, and legislate for equal marriage. And while the Yes campaign lost the independence referendum that year by 55% to 45%, it was a year when Scotland was energised and was debating our future as a country. It was contagious and it was empowering, Swinney said. Jackie Bailey, a Scottish Labour deputy leader, said Swinney had delivered a copy and paste speech by offering no new ideas. John Swinney's attempts at self-reflection rings hollow while SNP is continuing to dodge responsibility for his record in government, she says. I do think the SNP do need to take some form of ownership and responsibility. They have been in power for a long time. It's a very important caveat to add that. I think that is important. While at the same time, it's also worth reminding that they have had to cooperate for a long time. With a very annoying and frustrating Conservative government. I'm sure it's not been an easy ride for them. And I think that's an important caveat there. As for, constantly saying everything is all on them, I do think, I do think there is some blame at Westminster, but I do think there are some things that the SNP can and should do and can do to improve the society of people in Scotland. But I also think, not just on top of all the things that have obviously taken a battering to the SNP, I think it's also really important to understand people is that when you've had the same political party in power, in control of things for a long time, it does get stale after a while. Even if the party has been good to you, it can still get stale. And I think that's played a role in that last general election as well. Not really having anything different for a long time. So it's entirely possible that Labour could snatch power in 2026, but time will tell, obviously, on that. But I do think they've got between now and 2026 to show what they can do. The SNP. Obviously, if they want to keep mentioning independence, they're more than welcome to do so. But I would advise just drop that tone if don't speak too much about it, and try to speak about the main real bread and butter issues of the Scottish people and win back over those hearts and minds. And if they have to and of course to cooperate with the Westminster government as best they possibly can, to enable to get the best interests of the people of Scotland first and foremost. But what do you guys honestly think? What do you guys make, from my Scottish friends up there north, guys? What do you make of the situation with the SNP at the moment? Do you guys think that is it everything all on Westminster? Could the SNP could have done more? Should have done more? Do you think some of the scandals and things that came, was it all just a case of bad timing? Let me know your thoughts and more down in the comments section below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. I would greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further and support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.